Look, let me say good afternoon. I think I came in at the right time, discussing disaster recovery, and let me tell you, I'm very pleased with where we are at this point. We face the most horrific disaster for the city of Houston and the region. When you have like 27 trillion gallons of water that fall on you. Some places getting 50 inches of rain. That is quite a bit. More rain that fell on the city of Houston and the region than any other place in the country at any time. That's a lot. That's a lot. And this storm didn't just it didn't discriminate. If you win, let me say, the storm and the aftermath with the release of water. Let me combine the two. And so if you were in Kingwood, about 5,000 homes in that area flooded. If you're in West Houston, flooded. If, of course, Maryland, Braeswood area, same thing. If you were in Northeast Houston and far Northeast Houston, areas flooded. On the south side, even going down the Clear Lake area, those areas flooded. And so it was one of those storms that just said, the rain is coming, the sky is open, and the rain fell. But if we stop that, that doesn't tell the whole story. So you can't just stop there. During the storm, immediately after the aftermath, Houstonians just stepped up big time. And not just Houstonians, but people in the areas. Neighbors helping neighbors, incredible. First responders, police, fire, municipal workers, just an incredible commitment. I never want to overlook someone like Sergeant Perez, been with the force about 33 years, was on his way to his post, okay? Couldn't get downtown, didn't go back home, drove around 2.5 hours, they decided he was gonna go to another location, police post, and that's when he drowned. Or one of our public work employees whose life was in turmoil for 20 years, in and out of prison. For 20 years, in and out of prison. Then he went through the city's reentry program. We hired him in May of this year. Okay, literally, he turned his life around, and called in on that morning. Said to his supervisor, "I'm trying my best to make it in. I'm running into a lot of rain and water." Supervisor tells him, "Be careful," and that was the last that we heard of him, and he drowned. Okay. But didn't stay at home. And when we were telling people, stay at home, stay off the road, stay safe, you had first responders who were leaving their homes to protect others. And first responders, for example, who went without their medication. You had hundreds of first responders whose homes flooded. One of our assistant chiefs, her home flooded, but she stayed at her post, okay? So, and I can give you story after story. Good Samaritans, okay? People just putting themselves in harm's way to protect one another. And this was one of those times when people didn't ask what your party affiliation was. They didn't ask what your religion was. They didn't ask what language you spoke, okay? That was not important. The reality is that if you were in need and they were close enough or could assist, they really helped out. And so it was a storm that eliminated divisions, divides, and brought us all together. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of how the city responded. And that will be one of my lasting memories. My hope is that from this storm, the things that brought us together, that desire to be helpful, that will exist a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And if not, then we only have ourselves to blame. There were a number of people, businesses that were impacted. About 5,000 commercial properties were in areas that were inundated with at least a foot of water, okay? Some businesses, homes were impacted, but businesses were impacted as well, especially small businesses. Just recently heard that I think there was a prominent restaurant in the Midtown area that ended up closing because of the impact of the storm. There were a number of businesses that lost their inventory, especially restaurants, okay? You know, but then at the same time that there were a number of restaurants that employees couldn't get home, so they stayed in their restaurants and they were cooking, preparing meals for first responders and others. There was a bakery in the near Northside area. His employees couldn't get home, so they just baked a whole lot of bread. And then they went out in the surrounding areas and were making bread available. And they baked a whole lot of bread. They just kept baking and baking and baking. Small business. It was a small business. And then there were some businesses, for example, who couldn't stay open or couldn't remain open because either they lost power or they were flooded or the employees could not get to them. Okay? And so they were impacted. And at the same time, in that same spirit, many of them are coming back. I think it was a business in Kingwood where there were a small business, a loss was flooded, but it was another business close by that wasn't, and they started sharing space. Okay? So there's that spirit of sharing and cooperation. And so small businesses make up the largest part of the businesses in our area. We always can focus on the big businesses, but it's those small and medium-sized businesses that really keep the economy moving and the doors are open. So I really want to thank and appreciate those small businesses. We have received some funding already from the feds, and the hope is that much more will be coming. And the hope is between what FEMA will provide, what the federal government will provide, the Small Business Association, of course, they're providing loans, and I want to thank them. We're working with the Texas Workforce Commission in creating some job opportunities for a number of individuals as well. So there are a number of things that are taking place. We're trying to leverage resources, work with one another, and if we continue to work together on all levels, then we can see our small businesses coming back. And then at the same time, you know, we can't stop. We are in the recovery, and we will recover, but we have to be more resilient. I appointed Marvin Odom, who is the former CEO of Shell, to lead the recovery effort. But we need to be more resilient. We need to build stronger. That's going to be important. And so there are certain mitigation strategies that I think we have to put in place if we're asking businesses and people to rebuild. City of Houston has already taken one initiative where we borrowed $47 million from the Texas Water Development Board. We borrowed it. They approved it 2 days ago. It's a zero-based loan. We, in turn, will pass it over to the Harris County Flood Control District, and then they will work with the Corps of Engineers to complete Project Braze.
Great.
Okay? So that's... that project, in the absence, it could be 2021, 22, 23, before it was constructed. But, you know, we have borrowed it, passing it on, and now they will start working on retrofitting many of those bridges in March of next year. Okay? That literally will help to remove hundreds, if not a few thousand homes and businesses out of being in a flooded status. It will mitigate their risk, and that's a significant step forward. There are two other bayous, White Oak and Hunting. They're in the same situation. They're ready. They're shovel ready. They're lacking the funding. Those three combined, the total cost is $311 million. Okay? Waiting on the feds, but we need those funds to come down now so that we can move on those projects now, because one thing we do know, just like there was the Memorial Day storm in 2015 and the Tax Day storm in April of 2016 and Hurricane Harvey in August of 2017, there will be another storm. And we need to engage in all of these mitigation strategies now. We need another third reservoir, either in West Houston or in that Cypress Creek area, because even that Cypress Creek, when it overflows, it flows into the Barker Addicts, and then it comes down. The cost of that project is between $400 to $500 million, and we need to get that done, okay? Because that will in fact impact businesses and others as well. So that needs to get done. And then lastly, on a mitigation project, well, that's not last, on that on the north side, on Inwood, Antoine area, it's the Inwood Golf Course, and there are businesses all up and down Antoine in that area. That area still kind of floods, but we're looking at taking that golf course and turning it into a detention basin. In fact, we're going to do it. We've started the engineering work. That area can hold more water, that detention basin, more water than the Astrodome. Okay? It will help that whole area mitigate the risk, okay? But we don't just need to dig the hole. It really then needs to turn into a recreational center, park, you know, with hike and bike trails, bicycle ways. I know I got you on that one. But that will serve to mitigate the risk of flooding even in that area. And then lastly, if the storm had hit in the Galveston Bay and created a huge storm surge, and you know water goes from the streets to the bayous to the Gulf. If it had the Galveston Bay storm surge, then the water from the bayou would have been backed up. You back up the water from the bayous, stays in the street. If it backs up in the street, it goes into the home. And so we need to really put in place the coastal spine, those gates. It is an expensive project, about $12 to $13 billion, okay? But let me tell you, 12 to 13 billion on one end, 150 to 200 billion on the other end. And there's precedent for it because after Hurricane Katrina, the feds appropriated $14 billion for a mitigation project in Louisiana. Well, we need to do the same thing here. It will save a lot of businesses, large and small and medium sized, and we need to do it. And then lastly, and I'm gonna wrap up, Peg, because thank you for inviting me. But when it comes to small business, we are focusing more on startups, technology, and innovation. Okay, that's important. And so we need to put more emphasis on that. High-tech type jobs. Chicago started their deal 5 years ago. They labeled it 1871. And they've gone from venture capitalists from 370 million to about 1.7 billion. They've created 40,000 high-tech jobs. And for every high-tech job, it creates about another 5 to 8 jobs as well. Well, what Chicago can do, we can do better. And we need to move in that area in startups, technology, and innovation. Because quite frankly, in the end, if we're going to get the Amazons of the world, we have to provide these startups, these smaller businesses, really incentivize them, create an innovation district, okay, for these startups. And there will probably be, there will be an announcement on that next week, probably on Tuesday, because we really need to incentivize that whole process. So I'm excited about where we are. We're in the recovery phase, but let me just tell you, and when there are challenges, they present opportunities. And this is a can-do city. It has always been a can-do city. That's not going to change. And so we're going to move forward to do everything we can to make it work. And I look forward to continuing to work with the council members. I see Councilmember Mike Knox, who's here, and others, in order to make sure that small businesses remain a part of the equation, and we need to build out that small business ecosystem, because when small businesses thrive, the city of Houston will grow. So thank you so very much for having me. Thank you.